Hello, everybody. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you may be in this crazy world. How are you? Well, did everybody get a chance to watch the ZBrush Summit week? Man, that was so good. Dope. Just wrapping up a couple quick things before we into live. Just one second. So, where were we? We were working on this is something that we've been working on something I've been working on um, for a little while. I initially started this as a game dev model, but adapted it a few streams ago to collectibles. Why we're going with the pose, because I am by trade video game character artist. Those of you, and I sculpt a pose characters all day long. I really miss having pose. So I've been doing a lot more collectible lately on my personal side. So that's what this is. So this is where we've gotten to so far with this one. If you would like to go back and watch any of the previous streams of how we got here, I actually did most of the initial block out on this channel. So if you go to zbrushnlive.com and take a look under my page, Brendon Isaiah. Yeah. So what else? This is for collectibles. The size is going to be probably about a foot high. So it's 6 scale. I'm not sure the exact scales, but about a foot high. That's about what I'm going for. So let's look at the concept real quick. You can actually see it in the bottom right of your screen, but we can take a better look here. The full concept. So this is a concept from Bjorn Heery. Super dope, amazing concept artist and great all around gentleman. This is from his Abominations book that he released with Spiridon probably a year plus ago. And so this is one of the concepts. This book. That one. Anyways, great book. But this is the concept. It's a demon general, and the basic idea of this is the demons are more or less immortal. So when you kill them, they like go back into the ether and then they come back. So the longer they live without being killed, the more their horns grow. The idea is that the larger the horns, the longer they've been around, and have not had been defeated or killed or what. So that's the concept. Okay, ready to roll. So today we're going to work on a couple of things that we can work on. I have been starting to kind of block in just the overall flow of some of the cloth. Just trying to get some kind of interesting curves kind of all the way around. This is my initial idea, but I want to kind of incorporate a little bit more into the base. Thinking maybe like a tree trunk that may kind of come up and curl back this way to kind of echo this flow. I like the flow of coming towards us like this, and then back away from us, like that. So kind of like this like twisting feeling. So I may get into maybe some tree trunks to do that. So that's a possibility. I do want to do more work on the horns. And then we have a little bit more kind of placement adjustment stuff of some of this this armor here. So you can see it's not everything's all nice and pretty yet. So those are the things that are on my docket for today. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with just some quick tree roots. And I want to kind of, it's mostly because I've been working on this kind of like this feel and this feel, so I kind of want to continue that. So we're just going to append a sphere. Let's just make it brown to start with. Why not? Here. Who knows what we're going to do with this thing? Figure it out. So how's everybody else doing? How's everybody doing? You guys all enjoyed the ZBrush Summit as much as I did. Redshift is coming? Oh, what? So, pretty excited about that. All right, so depending on the scale of your scene, sometimes you may run into this where your draw size doesn't quite go all the way up to the top. So if that is the case, you can just go up to Preferences, Raw, and then increase your max brush size. Times that. All right, so what I'm going to do is let's turn on Sculptors Pro, let's turn on Snake Hook, and we'll just see if we can kind of get interesting action here. Kind of comes over here, comes out and back there. All right, so we kind of got this. It looks like a giant piece of poo, which is awesome. Let's just put that away for now. Don't put it out with your boots, Ned. Don't tell me what to do, devil woman. Yeah, we'll just kind of get this flow. So I like the idea of kind of this swoopy McSwooperson action. Maybe it's too. Pull that. Couple little that kind of come this way. Don't want to take up too much space on this side. I don't want the base to become too wide. I kind of like this like tall feel to it. Actually, you know what I'm gonna do is let's shorten the base. Not shorten, but like skinny up the base a little bit. Maybe what we'll do is maybe the footprint will be something smaller like that. These are all separate. So what we could do, let's see if we can get this maybe taller and not quite as wide. So let's go Control click, Shift click there, click here, and then we'll just drag over to here. Now I know that it's perfectly aligned with this plane. We'll just okay. Can hide this guy. Clear the mask. Back up. Control click. Sorry. Control click. Okay. What's up, Mini Chick Studio? How you doing? How's life? Word. Let's grab this one. Mask it. Let's put this guy here. Let's that. Okay. And we can that. Clear the mask. Oops. Click and drag to there. Okay, cool. Unhide. Oops. Mask. Unhide. Flip the mask. Use the rest of that to line up. Okay, that's working. So clear the mask. Grab this guy. Sculpting along and practicing. Nice. Yeah, I was watching the ZBrush Summit this last week, and all I wanted to do was sit and sculpt, but I couldn't because I was working. But I was sculpting while I was working, so I really just wanted to work on personal work, though. Okay, so let's see how that feels. Maybe what we could do is just adjust this. Kind of come. Want to have enough for her foot. That feels all right. Maybe what we can do then is make this taller. We have an extra step down there. I don't think we need all those steps. Maybe we can get rid of one of these. Get rid of one of these. I don't need all. Get out of here. All right, so let's just hide that for now. There. I want the top of this to stay where it's at, but I want to make it smaller. Oh, I mean taller. So I'll just do it like that. Then what I could do, maybe if I want the bottom to be a little bit wider, we'll just go mask. What this gives me is a little bit more height, but it also gives me room to do some kind of little sculpty details on the base. And that's kind of what I'm shooting for. Sculpting mix sculptors. Okay. What we could do for now probably is let's turn that off. Let's go into our Z modeler tool and we'll do bevel. Let's turn off dynamic subdiv, do bevel. We'll just add a little bevel. And then we'll just click once and do the same bevel. All right, now what we'll do is we'll do uncrease all, crease polygroup, then dynamic subdiv. Pretty little bevel. What motivated you as a beginner artist? What helped you? Fear zone. The fear zone. What do you mean by the fear zone? Like working in the industry, fear zone, or not knowing what the hell I'm doing, fear zone. I think the thing that really motivated me um, early on in my career is just watching all these other amazing artists and watching um, like videos and movies and playing games where just the experience is just so incredible. And you're like, I want to do that. And then realizing that in order for me to work at that level in the industry as a professional, that's how good I got to get. Like um, God of War, like all of those really amazing, super realistic, awesome games, awesome looking games. That's my competition, and kind of knowing that the that's the level I want to get to. That was that's the thing that keeps me going as well. Um, fear of failure. I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't think that fear ever really goes away. Um, there's the whole imposter syndrome that is still very much a thing. But I think that the way you get around that is doing your own art and feeling comfortable in what you feel that you can do and what you can do well. You can make cool art that's your own art. That really helps with any kind of fear of failure, really, because you can always go and say, well, yeah, I may not be as good as Raf Grassetti, but he has different art than I do, and I have different art than all these other people that are out there doing it, and just kind of being comfortable in your own art and your own style, and what you can do, really helps that whole like fear of failure thing. Just like doing as much art so that you feel comfortable in the art that you can produce. Because my art is different from everybody else's art, just like your art is different from my art. The thing that makes art awesome is kind of uniqueness, and like what you bring to the table. What makes it. This is a concept from Bjorn Huri. He is a concept artist working in the film and video game industry. Bottom right, and this, that's the book it's from. Abominations. Don't think that you can get it from Amazon. I think you have to actually get it from Kickstarter. But he released that book. It's full of amazing concepts. This is one of the concepts. Okay, so we've got that. I don't really think I'm not really jazzed on what's going on over here. So maybe what we'll do, just take this guy. Let's put another thing down here. This thing that goes up and around this way. So let's turn on Snake Hook, turn on Sculptus Pro, and then let's see if we can get something happen. We'll see. We'll see if it works. We could do too, which is really cool, is kind of incorporate some of um some of this into the base, right? So it's not it's kind of like going over the base, kind of like clipping the plane. The plane, clipping the plane. we've got kind of this action and then kind of coming down here. So maybe what we'll do actually is we'll take this thing and swing it to the back a little bit. And again, it's just kind of trying to feel the flow of what's going on. Maybe we got like this little Ida skull down here. Cool. Could you tell us who you are and do you have an art station? Hello, my name is Brendon Isaiah. I'm an artist. I am a video game character artist by day and a sculptor painter of cool things by night, or by day in this case on weekends. I am a lead character artist at Crystal Dynamics. I've been at Crystal Dynamics for 5 years now. I'm doing character art. And then Clinker Built Studio is my my studio that I started up for sculpting, building, and painting miniatures and kits to sell. That's what I do. If you'd like to take a look at some of our work, clinkerbuiltstudio.com, just below. My art station. Let me type that in for you, because I've got a long name. / Brendon Isaiah Bengtson. Boom. Oh, yeah, no problem. Does Crystal Dynamics use real-time hair? Do we have, I think what you're asking is, do we use real-time hair, and if so, do we have a hair artist that does hair? The answer is yes, we do real-time hair, but most of us do hair. We don't have a specific person doing hair. We don't have an actual, just a hair artist. All of us kind of hair. Just see if we can get something that may feel interesting. Kind of. Yeah, no problem. No problem. I don't stream a whole lot, maybe like once a month or so on Pixelogic, and every once in a while on my own. Okay, so this is kind of coming in here. What I'm thinking is that this one want to come up this way. And you know what? This may just not work at all, which is totally fine. Maybe this is just have this one kind of be smaller. But the thing that you want to do is kind of fail fast. Try some things out, see if it works. If it doesn't, then you know it doesn't work. Right? I mean, right? So this one can come up a little bit higher. Kind of really lose it behind there, so it's fairly irrelevant from this side, but I think it'd be more for kind of in the round when you're kind of looking at this from other directions here. Let's fill in all of this down here. Fill in. Let it save. What I try to do is whenever it autosaves, take a drink of water. Actually, if you look at my art station, the T'Challa Black Panther head that I did uses real-time cards. You can see some of the stuff that I've done for real-time. This thing. What I'm thinking is that this kind of comes in front, this goes in back. So maybe what I need to do, this guy gotta go kind of back. Oh, thanks. Any tips for someone who wants to start a career in games? Yes, the first Marcelo is to figure out what in games you want to do. Do you want to do VFX? Do you want to do character art? Do you want to do environment art? Do you want to do game design? Do you want to do hard surface? Do you want to do audio? There's so much. That's the first thing, is figure out what calls to you. Figure out what you want to kind of sink your development time into. That's the biggest thing. This character art, do everything that you can to be a super dope character artist. If it's environment art and environment art sings to you, do everything that you can to be a dope environment artist. That's the biggest thing. If it's just like, oh, I just want to work in video games, I mean, there's plenty of other jobs within video games that doesn't take such a high amount of investment rate as, say, character artist or environment art, types of things. Like, well, or like super good audio or what have you. Um, Heck, they even have people that work in finance um, or not grounds, but people who actually run the studio on a daily basis. IT, like all of that. Are you an engineer? You want to do stuff for like the engineering that it takes to build the game. That's the biggest thing for me. Is just figure out what you want to do, where you want to invest your time. Because it will take a good minute or two to get good. Get good. Okay. So you see kind of what I'm trying to do here. I'm trying to mimic this, where like the curve kind of comes at you this way and then fades back that way. But I also don't want to cover up a bunch of things on the model. So it's got to be interesting yet unobtrusive. Okay, so let's take this a bit further and see what we can do. We can get some easy secondary shapes kind of coming in to see where we can. Looks good. You're a real-time hair artist. Well, bless your heart, Sid. Bless your heart. In all honesty, because there are not enough of you in the game industry. Most of us absolutely hate hair. But there are a few blessed souls in this world who say, you know what? I like doing video game hair. Give me all the hair. Which is actually great. Because if you like doing that, there's a shortage of people who are like, yes, give me the hair. I think maybe the downside is that actually kind of not a whole lot of studios have a designated I just do hair artist, if that makes sense. Typically it's a subset of the character artist that does hair, right? Maybe you'll have like the character artists that work in there. Maybe one of them is like, oh, I love doing the hair, so well, let's just give you all the hair. That's fine. Or we all learn from you, kind of thing, you know. But if you're like, oh, I just do hair, there's not a lot of oh, I just do hair, unless you are going to work for like an outsourced studio that specifically does hair. Where you're like, hey, I do hair, and then me as like a lead or somebody who's driving the production of a video game says, you know what, maybe we'll just have an outsourced studio do our hair for us, which actually happens quite a bit. But now that goes to this other vendor studio that you work at, right? And then the jobs come in and say, hey, we need this hairstyle for so and so. Then you get that job, you do the hair, and then you move on to the next hair. So that's typically where you see people with like a smaller, like, kind of, I wouldn't say range, but specialty is typically in like an outsourced studio. But bless your heart, absolutely, for for taking on hair. um, yeah, it's a pain in the beginning, but we learn the basics. It's fun. Yeah, I did. I did a ton of hair. I did. Well, I worked really closely with outsource vendors during um, Marvel's Avengers. But I did a lot of work on it in house. So I kind of worked with the vendors, and then did edits, and then kind of did um, sculpt overs and so on. And then I did a lot of kind of rework myself house. But there's um, there's stuff on my art station. You can see what I did. This is not an original character, Gurk. This is a character from this book right here called Abominations. And the concept is on the other side over there from Bjorn Hiri, the demon general. Hello, Brendon. I'm wondering how you build your LP pipeline, low poly pipeline, when working with character model. You make your details like separate meshes, or try to make the details as part of the main mesh. It really depends. It depends on animation, right? So you got to think of like how would this character, if it was a video game mesh, move around, right? And what pieces would you put together, and what pieces would you keep separate? Um, it really depends. It depends on what the character's going to do. Depends on it depends on a lot, really. And different artists even within the same team may build it a little bit differently. So there's some gray area that goes in it. But let's say for this one, let's talk about like in the low poly, what would I make? Actually, you know what? Let's save, and then I'm gonna pull up the A pose of this one. Go, ooh, gadget A pose. I'll show you. But it really it depends. Don't mind the face. The face is old and kind of gross. But you see, this is the A pose that I did the initial block out for. So let's talk just real quick about what you would kind of build together and what you would build separately, like separate mesh. So for this one, you got to think about movement and how things are going to be squashed and stretched and move on a rig. So in this particular case, right, these pieces are all hard surface, so you'd probably want to do those guys separate, right? So that they can, when she moves her arm up, those can, they're not going to squash, they're going to kind of slide over each other. Right? So these pieces you would definitely make separately. As for the, like this piece, typically when you're in realistic AAA, you have a base body that you're going to work from, because that base body contains the majority of your animations that are already built on the base body. And it's not necessarily the mesh that's the base body, but it's the joint locations for because basically they're animating the joint locations, right? So if I build a whole nother character and the joints are all in the same spot, then you can reuse those animations. You just skin the mesh to that skeleton, and then you can reuse a lot of that stuff. So typically what happens is if you're not creating something completely different, like a quadruped or, you know, longer limbs kind of thing, then you would kind of leave your base mesh as is, or at least close to as is, and then build your stuff on top of it. So it's like you have your base body, and then you build your outfit on top of the base body. So in this particular case, I would probably leave, I wouldn't build in a lot of these things into the actual base body, into the skin. I would build on top of it. And then I would, where I wanted to combine the meshes of low res, I would combine them into the outfit, and all of that outfit would go onto the base body. Mostly because you want to reuse as many assets as possible. So if I have textures and skin details and everything that's already built for my standard base mesh, I want to reuse those as much as possible. So I don't want to edit the base body low res mesh, right? Because if you do that, then things may get weird and your UVs may get shot, and then that will pretty much negate all of the base body textures that you already have that you can reuse. That's really why you don't want to build things into the actual base body if you don't have to. And again, that's mostly for when you're reusing the same base body humanoid mesh or whatever that you have those base textures for. So that's why you kind of build the outfit on top of it so that way you can reuse the textures from the base body underneath. So I would say this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, this one. All these guys here could probably be the same low res mesh, but it depends on the animation. So if you're saying that you know, if the actual, if this was built in real life, you know, how would these things be connected? Maybe it would be some kind of pin or something under here. So maybe having them on as the same low res mesh is okay. But if they were like somehow like magically just kind of stuck there, and when you kind of bend and move like this, they slide, then obviously you would want to make those separate meshes. But so let's say maybe this one and this one and this one and this one, they probably wouldn't slide independently. So you may want to build all of that into one mesh. This is going to move separate. This is going to move separate. That would be separate mesh. As for the arm, probably all of this here can be one mesh. Maybe we'll leave this one separate from this, so that when you bend the wrist like this, it's not stretching over it, but there's an actual gap there. So the whole forearm would be all one mesh. Probably do these separate and just hide them under here. This would be a mesh. These straps would probably be separate. You kind of get the idea, right? So it's really about how you're going to animate and how things are going to move. Yeah, thank you for the insight. No problem. If you will retopo the cloth, will you make it one-sided polys? No. Something that is like out in the open like this, where it has a life in the, life on this side and life on this side, you always want to do it double-sided. The only time you really want to do something single-sided would be like this cloth under here, where you're like absolutely never gonna see the underside of this cloth here, right? But if it's something like this one or this one or this one, you definitely want to build that as two-sided. Just give it a little bit of thickness. That way, another reason to do that is it doubles the polys, where it actually more than doubles the polys, because you take the polys from the thickness, but it also casts shadows correctly when you have double-sided. So if you only have single-sided, a lot of engines won't cast shadows from the other side, unless you do a double-sided material. But if you assign a double-sided material to something like this, then it costs more. So it's about offsetting what costs more in the long run, in the holistic picture. So does it cost more to have a little over double the polygons, where this may be like, I don't know, 300 polygons? You're like 600 polygons? The cost of 600 polygons over 300 polygons is not quite as much as if you had multiple shaders that have single-sided rendering or double-sided rendering. Don't say it, Dougie. Don't say it. All right. So now that I come back here, it's actually kind of, I like the feeling a little bit more. So what I'm liking is that it's kind of hiding and or kind of integrating the steps into the base, and it's not feeling like, oh, she's on steps. It just feels like this is all kind of one cohesive thing that has some flow to it, and then it pushes your eye back up to here. So it's complementary and not what's the word? I swear. Yeah, it doesn't draw your eye away from it. So we'll just kind of get the basic idea of what's going on here. We won't spend too much time. Okay, we've got the main trunk that kind of comes. This is another thing I do is I actually use lock camera, and I put that on Shift C as a quick keyboard press. That way, like when I'm doing this, where I'm trying to kind of get these lines coming in here, and I accidentally grab off of it, doesn't screw me like. So just hit lock real quick, and then it doesn't move. I can come off here. Yeah, I do want this. Maybe not from that side. Autosave. Great questions though. I like those types of questions. Keep them coming. Opposing. No, not opposing. It's distracting, I think is. Not distracting. Maybe this actually comes down. Out. And then I'm paying attention to what I like to call compound silhouettes. What compound silhouettes are, when I refer to, is when you have shapes in your silhouette that kind of contribute to the silhouette, but then come inside of the silhouette. So as you're turning, you get different shapes that are coming in from the silhouette edge and adding to the silhouette. So thanks, Arvid. So as I'm turning this way, right, we've got, if I bring this guy out just a little bit like this, right, and then he actually kind of comes in like this, right? So my silhouette is made up of things in depth. That way, whenever I'm coming around, you've got like these different curves and these different elements kind of ducking in and coming out at different rotation amounts. And that's what I kind of mean by dynamic silhouettes. And I'm also paying attention to small, medium, and large shapes as I'm doing that. So right here, it's like, oh, we've got this curve, and this curve, which are all about the same size curve. So what I want to do is I want to make sure that maybe there's a small curve, medium curve, and a large curve. So maybe this one kind of does that, maybe. All right, so we have small curves, medium curve, large curve. It doesn't have to go that way. It doesn't have to go like small, medium, large. You just have to have those three. Do you have any tips for back muscles? I always have problems making them feel natural. The back is really interesting because depending on the position that the character is in, it has a completely different look and feel. So what I would do is pick your pose. Right? Is it arm up? Is it arm down? Is one arm down? Is the shoulder back? Is it forward? And then build your skeletal structure first. Think about where the clavicle is when it slides up when your arm comes up, right? And what is that like? If you look at the back, here's your basic clavicles like this, but if this arm goes up, now you've got this type of shape happening, right? Where you got some vertical lines over here, but now you've got some kind of more horizontal lines as that scapula kind of moves around like that. And then you think, well, what are the muscles doing to move that, right? So the trapezius in here is contracting basically. So this part of the trapezius is much like taller than this side, which is not in contraction, so it's like flatter. So it's like understand the pose, figure out what the skeletal structures are doing, and then build the muscle on top of there based on what muscles are flexing and what are contracting and which ones are not contracting. That's really the way that I make sure that backs are interesting. Okay, so dynamic silhouettes. Right, so that's, see, it's feeling more interesting now, right? Whereas before it was like, oh, it's kind of meh. Like, there's so many times when you look at something and you're just like, that feels okay. Yeah, great questions, man. Great questions. Keep those coming. But once you start realizing why something's meh and then changing it so it's not meh, that's what makes like your piece is so much stronger. And even if you just focus on one of those principles, one of those artistic principles at a time, and say, try small, medium, large shapes. Look at that. Look at that in even just not even your own, right? So if I'm looking at his concept, I'm like, okay, why does this feel awesome? Even just from small, medium, and large shapes. Okay, well, let's take this, right? We've got a large surface area here. We've got kind of a medium surface area and then a small surface area, right? This one to here is kind of medium, large, small, right? So we got like these small, medium, and large shapes. It doesn't have to be like you have to have one of each one. It could be like the number of things that you have is a few, a handful, and a lot. You know what I mean? So it's like not just the shape of things, but small, medium, and large in that whether it's the shape or the frequency of detail, where you have a lot of detail, which is large, or a little bit of detail, which is medium, or like no detail, which is small, right? Using those three offsets in shape, silhouette, frequency of detail, negative space, positive space, like all of those things, like that's when you start getting really, really good looking shapes to the eye, right? So like what are some other things? Right, we've got frequency of detail, right? We've got all this crazy detail in here, and then that's what makes this so strong right here is that it's a lot of detail, very little detail. Oh, back to a little bit of medium res detail, back to like no detail, and the same thing through here, right? We've got all this detail here, place for your eye to rest, detail, place for your eye to rest, and the same thing if you go vertically, right? You've got detail down here, place to rest, medium res detail here, high detail here, right? So it not just the shapes, but frequency of detail, like a lot, a medium amount of things, a little bit of things. So I try to look for those all over the place, and that's something I've been focusing on a lot over the last kind of couple of years, and it's made a massive difference just in the overall look and feel of how something that you respond to a piece of art. You know? Did I start symmetric? I actually did, but in a roundabout way. I initially did her as a game art pipeline, so I was working in symmetry for a pose, but then I got to this point and I was like, you know what, I really just want to do this for a collectible. So that's when I posed what I had and then kind of went. The moment, so it's always a little bit like, hey, when do you break symmetry, or when do you pose? When do you get away from utilizing working in symmetry to go asymmetrical, whether it be a pose or working in asymmetry. It's the balance between, is it more work? Do you feel it's going to be more work when it's out of symmetry? Or do you feel it's going to be more work when it's in symmetry? if that makes sense. So for me, at this point where I made the decision, okay, it's time, is when I had enough of the initial things like plotted out before I get into details. Believe it or not, this is not detail. This is still block in. You utilize as much of symmetry as you can, and then I know that once I get to this, I'm gonna have to move all of this stuff and resculpt these pieces, and move these a little bit, and kind of move this quite a bit. That was the point about here when I actually feel it was a little too far, because like all of this under cloth, I had to completely redo all that, because as soon as you move this, like, this is never going to move the exact same, because it's different geometry, it's different kind of. So it's when your gut says, I'm going to spend more time on the other side of that decision versus before that decision. If that makes any sense at all. And it's always different for every project. So but the other cool thing is, like, the antlers are still block out, right? There's still a ton of work to do. So the question is, do I do that here, or do I go back to symmetry? So you could use the stager, which is in Tool, Geometry, Stage. So Tool, Geometry. Oh, where is it? Stager. Right? So you could say, oh, okay, well, this is the home stage, and then, or this is the, sorry, this guy. So this is the target stage, right? And then I can say, oh, well, I'm going to go back to symmetry, right? And then try to work in symmetry. Right, and I can do that. Maybe it's this way. Something like that. And then if I go into symmetry mode, right, it's still not symmetry. So I could spend some time putting this back into symmetry mode and say, okay, that's my home stage. And then I could say, oh, symmetry sculpt, symmetry sculpt, symmetry sculpt, and then go switch stage, and then I can go back to this, right? That's one of the cool things about the stager. And, like, when do you go out of symmetry and when do you not? You can actually use your stager to be like, oh, I'm going to sculpty, 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 cool, 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 and then switch stage and be like, oh, that's what it looks like. So I would say utilize stager. Get used to it though. Use it a couple of times, and then kind of see where the stager is good and see where it's not so great. Lots of comments. Sorry, I'm trying to catch up. Symmetric appearance. I thought subtools, cloth, and small chains with a thickness would be impossible to print. Are you going to make it thicker, or so the size of your details, right? So early on when I started sculpting this, I decided on what size I want this thing to be, right? Because there's a certain, like, if it's this size, all that stuff will never print unless you actually, like, bake it into the thing that's behind it that's bigger, right? But this is going to be about a foot. So all of those, I'm making sure that the thickness that I'm thinking about for the print should be okay at that scale. And then you would go in and say, okay, well, how do I how do I integrate those things? So when I get this thing print ready, I probably will integrate some of this into this piece and so forth, right? And I'll get in there and actually figure out how things are going to be printed with enough. But at this stage, because I'm still kind of in the blockout stage, I'm just about to details. But in this phase, I really want to focus on, does it feel great? Does it feel good now? Once it feels good in the overall piece is awesome, then I'll worry about those details. Again. I did a little bit of work to the brown neck piece in there. No, didn't adjust. What I'm using for this is so for this piece, I'm using one subtool, and then when I just duplicate it and then do a inflate of like -1, and that's what this is, right? It's just, if I go back and forth, it's just kind of like on the inside, and that's this piece, the orange. I just kind of struggle real early, and I want to keep it as long as possible in some symmetry and kind of feel angsty to break it early. And that's totally normal. I think everybody goes through that. And I think that's just to a point where you just say, all right, I feel like it's time and I got to commit. Right? And then just commit and do it. Looks really cool. Thank you. Hello. I guess everyone asked you that question, but how did you work on improving your skill? Do you have any tips? Any tips for improving your skill? Other than keep practicing and learn how to study, train your eyes to study. And that's a whole nother topic. Can you remind me about that? Train your eyes to study. Somebody remind me of that in about like 3 minutes. That's kind of a whole nother rant that I'd like to go on for a minute. But I'd like to get through a couple of these other questions really. Is there an admin besides Clinker Built? Never got the email. Yeah, it's just me right now, but sorry. If you reach out to, I think it's Maxon or Pixelogic support something, they may be able to get answers. So after the blockout A pose, so after the blockout A pose, all three digital, sculptor, game artist, collectible, printer out. I'm not sure what you mean. What's up, Tattoon? How you doing? Tips for cloth and wrinkles and all. You want all the tips for everything? um, Cloth and wrinkles. I think the biggest thing for cloth and fold logic. Let's put those two together. Not wrinkles is in like skin wrinkles, but because I feel like that's another thing. Skin has another plasticity. 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 Let's go with that. Than cloth does. Because cloth has more of a logic. No cloth or cloth. No comma cloth or no cloth. um, for cloth, it's really about where is your vectors, if I may, right? So for this one, obviously these are not like anywhere near kind of complete, but you want to know where your starting point is and where your vectors are going. So like if you have a starting point here and you have a vector Yeah, wrinkles on cloth. Okay, you have a vector coming this way. Whether that vector is someone pulling like this, where like the vector is coming this way because it's kind of pulling against this right here, or your vector is gravity. Knowing where the anchor point is and your vector, and then looking at right. So like in this particular one, here's the anchor point. The vector is just kind of flowy right now, but then there may be another kind of integration here, right? And then playing those together are kind of the first things that you would do. So let's say for these pieces here, obviously your hold point is up here, and your vector is gravity, right? So this piece right here is your gravity. It's actually more times than gravity because it's heavier than if there was nothing there. So you would say, okay, well, some of these things are going to get stretched, based on here, right? It may be pulling more here, so you may have. Let's get on the right subtool first. Okay, so what happens is different portions of this cloth could be pulled in different amounts, even though it's all going in the same direction. So you say, well, this one is actually pulling this center cloth more than these two, or different, right? So you could say, well, the vector is coming down this way, right? Because that's what's pulling it from your anchor point. Then you say, well, okay, maybe this, we can say that our pull point is coming from here, right? Right. So we say we're trying to explain the forces that are on the cloth. So knowing where your anchor point is and where your pull points are. So then right now this is kind of saying, oh, this is pulling the center section of this downwards, right? And then we could say the same thing maybe for here, because maybe the edges are getting pulled more as well. And if we look at this, it's actually dynamic subdivision. So there's not a ton of geo in here, so it's not really going to hold a lot of information at the point. But at this point, what we can do is just say, let's just hint at those forces, right? So maybe we can we've got something that comes up like that, right? Maybe we'll grab our lazy mouse. And it's coming almost straight up like that. So it doesn't really make sense because for it to kind of move, because it's really kind of pulling just straight down. Because I know your anchor point's here and your pull point is down here. So maybe we just got some things that kind of say, okay, yeah, this is pulling as well. Let's mask the edge here. Then we'll say, turn the mask off, turn the view of it off. And now we can make sure that the edge doesn't. All right, so you just kind of explain a little bit of where the vector is going. Something like that. In this particular case, the anchor point is not figured out yet, right? Because this is saying it's kind of flowy and kind of up in the air a little bit, or there's movement happening. But this down here is unresolved, so I'm not at a point where I can really say what's happening here. Is there the force of I can do this. And these are all not, you don't have to figure this stuff out exactly right away, but these are the things that should play in your mind when you're doing cloth, right? So gravity is, let's make sure I'm on the right one first. Gravity is going down this way, right? But we've got kind of gravity coming this way a little bit, right? Because this flow here. And then we should have, if this is on this, we'll have some buckling, right? Which means that we'll have a force coming in this way, and then, which is, you know, the weight of this thing. But then the force coming back, can't draw in here because this way, right? There's force coming back at it. So then you would have some buckles in here, right? Because you have this force coming this way and this coming back this way from laying on this thing, right? So you would have some buckles in here, right? And then you would figure out what those kind of buckles mean. Like if you have a large fold that comes this way, and then maybe a couple of small, medium folds that kind of come this way, and then a couple of buckles in here that kind of go like this, right? Because you have this one coming down and this one kind of pushing back up. So you have these little shapes that kind of like C shapes that come in here to show that this is pushing up from this, but also the weight of this is coming in, right? So those are the types of things that I think about when I'm trying to just block out cloth without doing Marvelous Designer. And then you can say, okay, well, we can go in and just do some of these kind of small ones, kind of like this, right? So you have the anchor points up here. The anchor points, maybe like this anchor point is actually a little bit closer to this anchor point, right? And that's why you have this little guy here, because they're forced closer to each other. And then as gravity pulls this down, it pushes them back further apart a little bit, and that's why it kind of smooths out a little bit, right? So you're going to see here, this guy is pulling that way. So understanding where your anchor points are and where your vectors are going, that's the biggest thing for doing cloth. Training your eyes to study. Yes. I actually took a course from a character design course from Anthony Jones. One of the things that really stood out to me about his course was learning how to study. It's really important to be able to train your eye to see things. That's the biggest thing, because if you don't see something, you can it's really hard to learn something, right? So training your eye to see things, and not just things, it's more about relationships, and understanding relationships, right? Why does this thing feel cool? Well, I know that small, medium, and large shapes are really important, and frequency of detail, none, medium amount, high amount, right? Those types of things. So I'm like, oh well, okay. Frequency of detail. I need to look for that, right? Knowing how to study and knowing what to study, then you can start looking for those things, right? I could just look at this picture and just go, oh, that's cool, and then just kind of move on. But you don't really know why it's cool or why it really like speaks to you. Figuring out why it speaks to you is how you figure out and train your eyes how to study. So why does it feel cool? That's the real question, right? Even though, so let's take minus like hue and value and pattern and all of the like the majority of the art principles, put those aside and let's just look at, okay, I'm focusing on small, medium, and large and frequency of detail. What in this can I pick out? What can I look for in this concept to say, in terms of frequency? Let's do frequency of detail first, and eye resting areas. what in this concept is working well, and what may not be working well in terms of frequency of detail. Okay. Well, let's look at the horns first, right? We've got let's just look at silhouette shapes. Like if you just say, okay, well, what type of shapes are in the silhouette, and just break those down, right? We've got super angled shapes, super angled shapes, super angled shapes. Okay, cool. Got super angled shapes, super angle, definite super angle, right? So this is angle is the kind of danger feeling, right? But then you have a little bit of swoopiness as well, right? So it's not just all spikes, right? You have this type of shape in the silhouette that kind of balances out all of the those angle shapes, right? So you say, oh, okay, this swoop here, right? And there's a real reason why there's not a lot of spikes everywhere, right? You say, oh, okay, frequency detail in spikes, cool, but this side of it purposely has none, right? And that balances the amount of detail, and those are the things you have to look for, right? And how to study. Say, well, why do those shapes speak to me? Because in this one there's a great balance between the different silhouette shapes. So you've got this type of shape, right? You got spikes, 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 soft, spike, 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 spikes, soft, spike, soft, right? So we've got all of these types of things happening in balance. And then you say, well, let's look at small, medium, and large shapes in the silhouette of the horns. Look at this gigantic curve, right? That's a large curve, right? We've got a medium curve, right? A medium curve. And then you've got some smaller ones, right? Medium, smaller, smaller, smaller. Large or medium, right? So because this shape is here, that's why this shape is so strong, is because that's the one gigantic curve shape that's in here, and then you've got some medium and smaller ones, right? Right. So that's what I'm saying is, by you have to learn how to study, is know what you're looking for, understand what you're looking for and why you're looking for it. That way you can start to decode these things to say, well, you've got, even just on the top here, you've got, big triangle, medium triangle, small triangle, small triangles, right? Medium triangle. So even in here, just looking at this, oh, if I'm looking at frequency detail, I know what I'm looking for. I know why I'm looking at it. And then you spread that out to kind of everything else, right? If you're looking at frequency of detail here, frequency of detail here, frequency of detail here, those types of things. That's what I mean by understanding like how to study, is understand what to look for in terms of artistic things. I guess artistic principles is the word I was looking for. And then you can start to decode why something looks cool, even just if you just look at it from small, medium, and large shapes, or frequency of detail in small, medium, and large. So that's what I mean. Train your eye and train your brain to be able to decode why those things look cool. And then what doesn't work, right? So just important as to say why something does work is also to say, okay, well, why does this thing look dumb, right? And then you could say, oh, well, maybe that's because before it was like 1, 2, 3, and everything was kind of like, you have one big shape, you have the same big shape, the same big shape, the same big shape. Okay, well then kind of change those a bit, right? Make a couple of small shapes in here, right? Maybe this one is the big one, and maybe this one needs to be smaller down here, or medium, right? And you say, oh, okay, well now that I know that like small, medium, and large shapes are important, I know that I know where to look for them. right? So then by talking about the dynamic silhouette, where shapes kind of pop in and pop out of the silhouette, I want to make sure that that is true for the whole way around, right? So at this angle, what do I have, right? I've got still big shape. This is kind of big shape still too here, kind of like this, but then we've got a small shape, and then we've got big, big, small. So maybe, maybe this needs to come out some or something, right? This is all real straight back here, so maybe I actually want to pull that out, which isn't going to affect this here because it's going backwards, right? But I want to make sure that now it just looks like a giant C. um, this is not really right. Maybe it pulls out here, that, and then ducks down here. I'm thinking about this in the round, right? Here is like it's super flat right there, right? You wouldn't really see super flat quite a bit, so maybe I'll just take this guy and just pull him out a little bit. And again, it's not going to change this silhouette much, but it will definitely change that. But again, it's about like what is the subject too, right? So it's a tree trunk. There's no straight lines in a tree trunk, so you got these big kind of wavy lines that kind of need to be in there. And then it never just ends like this. So maybe what I want to do is make sure that this is thicker up here, right? Because it's a it's a freaking tree trunk, right? So let's make this bigger up here, and then what we could do maybe is just let's terminate it, right? Because maybe what happened was it was broken or something, right? And then we can kind of looks like a giant carrot. Maybe we can go maybe bring kind of break up this look like it's broken again. Small, medium, and large is what I'm looking at. So maybe actually this comes up that. Got turn off. I'll get back to the questions here in a sec, guys. All right, tree trunks gets larger towards the bottom, skinnier as they go up, right? I want to make sure that at no point is it skinnier here than it is up here. So I want to make sure that all those shapes are right. And again, dynamic silhouette where I've got different parts of this thing kind of ducking in and diving out. Like this is inside the silhouette and then coming out and adding to the silhouette. This is inside the silhouette coming out, contributing, and then going back in. Now, you don't have to have that everywhere. Like this is another one here where the piece in the back is kind of contributing to it, but ducks back in. And that's just kind of personal preference. I like dynamic silhouette. Maybe we'll do the same thing real quick. And then obviously I don't want it to go, I want it to be staggered, right? I don't want to take away from the character. I just want it to be enough to kind of contribute to the overall flow of the character. So maybe I'll keep this one lower like this. It may be kind of cool too that they're going over each other. Kind of like that idea. Um, I once was an artistic vice principal. Really? If you don't have any proper concept art with proper views, how do you start visualizing characters with research? So, let's take this person, this concept, for example. And the question is, how do you complete the character if you only have a small portion of a concept? Um, the the best way to go about it is to really study the concept and understand the design language first. Understand the shapes that are happening again and again, and then what you can do is repeat some of those shapes on the back, right? So in this particular case, um, let's say I'm trying to figure out what the back of these shoulder guards look like. Well, I already know the type of shoulder guards that they are, right? They got this little lip thing, and then they got a flat space, and then they got some kind of pointy stuff, right? And I know that we've got a big point, big point, smaller point. There's some medium, large, and smaller shapes that go in there. Okay, I can kind of figure out in terms of what fits with this style for the back, right? As long as you're contributing or not contributing, but taking the design cues from the part of the concept that you do have. In this particular case, for the back of the armor, well, her armor is kind of made in different smaller, medium, and large shapes, kind of stacked on top of each other. So the back should probably be that way too, right? In some kind. Maybe it has similar parts where like there's ropes kind of coming across, right? Because ropes are a big thing um, crossing different elements. Okay, so maybe I'll take some ropes and pull them across things. Maybe I'll take some of the armor and do some. I could even take some of these pieces from this side and actually put them in the back. Um, and then, right, we know what the back of this looks like. And the back of the antlers probably look a lot similar to the front of the antlers. And then the back of the head really is kind of the only place where I'd be like, what does the back of the head look like? So if the back of the head, I would actually take pay really close attention to this language in here and this language in here, right? So we got a lot of parallel lines in here, and kind of very organic shapes. And then this is really strong too. And then like these little orange um, highlights are really strong too, right? So then I would say, okay, well let's get some of those shapes in there, and let's just see what feels good by using that same language. And then you try some things and you try other things and see what works and stuff, and see what kind of flows from an element that is in the silhouette of the front, and then how can you use that kind of interestingly in the back kind of thing, right? So it's the important thing about filling in a concept where that you don't have is to understand the design elements of what you do have in the concept, and then echo those things in the places that you don't have concept. So in this particular case, obviously it's not done. It just kind of threw some things back there, right? So then maybe I would take like this large piece here. Actually, these are on two different layers, so I'm gonna try to grab everything. Just grab these two as well. Try to just go. Oh, is that everything? Nope. There's some stuff on it. Got that little guy too, so I want to do that one. Okay, we just got that piece, or those two pieces. So then maybe I just took this from the front, and then brought it back here, and I'm like, oh, that's kind of a cool, like back plate. So take that piece and put it back here, and then I would, because that style is there, right? So it's a kind of a big flat piece with the orange border underneath it, and then I can say, well, you know, maybe the shape is going to be a little bit different, and then we just form that shape to kind of whatever we want, whatever we need. All right, so it would take some of those elements, kind of maybe put them back here and just follow the recipe. That's what I would. That's what I do. Right, again, I took the ropey thing, did it there. Probably just put some clasps on here, and then that's actually another really good opportunity to have some more cloth. Old logic in there. Are layers super important when sculpting? They can be, 100% can be. For me, in layers, I probably don't use layers until past blockout phase. In blockout phase, really what you want to do is you want to have kind of the freedom to get in and just do what I'm doing. Is you just grab something, you move it around, and, you know, grab another thing here, and, you know, move that around. The problem quickly becomes if you have layers, like, oh, I want to move something in here. Okay, well, if I have a layer, now I got to stop, go down to layers, make sure that something's here. If I have subdivisions, make sure the subdivisions are on high or low. Do I need to add something else? So it, like, kind of takes away from that flow. So if you're still in a phase where the flow is really important to you, to say, like, oh, I need to just be able to get in, grab something, move it around, go to another thing, move it around, then know that, like, layers, you may not be ready for layers. But, like, if you're doing face sculpting, like, and you've got, you know, skin pores and those types of things, like, yeah, super important to use layers there. Again, I want to make sure that I don't want to get into details too much too fast. I really want to make sure that I don't get into the nitty-gritty details before. I don't get into the tertiary details before the secondary details are done, and I don't get into secondary until primary shapes are done. I really want to make sure that I get the primaries done first. That feels awesome, and then you move into the next level of detail, or LODs. Where to find my things? Let me you can have my art station here. There's two different avenues for my things. Right now, this stuff is all Clinker Built Studio, which is my personal sculpting, building, and painting minis and kits studio. It's kind of my night job, weekend job stuff, personal stuff. So I sell painted minis on my storefront. So if you guys are interested in, I mostly just Warhammer and Warhammer 40K stuff. I do have done some D&D stuff, but mostly it's 40K. That's a Clinker Built Studio. There's a button to go to the shop from there if you want to take a look at what I have up for sale now. But for my day job is I'm a video game character artist. So if you like video games stuff, my art station is that. So did the stream go down? Got an ad. Can you guys still hear me on the on chat? Looks like it's still going. Check, check, check. You guys still hear me? Yes, you can still hear me. You can see. Okay. My Twitch page is here. Can you still see my screen? Okay. Okay. Well, I guess I will continue. But my Twitch page is tripping the heck out right now. But I will just continue. I'll just continue then. All right. Screen's okay. Okay. All right. Well, then let's keep going. Oh, that's on artstation.com. There we go. Do I teach? This is the teaching that I do. At this moment, I mostly just, that's kind of why I stream on Pixelogic, is to do this type of stuff, to teach. I don't have formal classes at the moment. But actually, that's one of the major reasons why I stream, is to teach and to do this type of stuff. I'm a big advocate of tuning in live to things when you can, so that you can get direct interactions and see things happening in real time. I think one of the most powerful things that you can do is watch a professional get stuck and then get unstuck. You know, it's the watching somebody else go through their problem solving ideology, and taking points from that. It's one of the I think one of the more stronger things that you can watch live. Just watching how somebody troubleshoots something, and you don't really get that a lot, or really ever, in like pre-recorded tutorials. Pre-recorded tutorials are great, but they don't really show the problem solving and figuring of things out. Figuring of the things out. That you know, there's been a couple of times where I'm like, oh, I'll put together some of these painting tutorials that I've done, you know, when I'm painting minis and stuff, and I'm like, you know what, I just hate putting together videos. It's so annoying. I hate it. But yeah, you know, that's why I think live stuff is great for me, because I could just kind of talk about things as they come up and show real-time things, and I think that's there's a lot of power to that. A lot of great things, and again, it's not for everybody, it's not for every time, but it definitely has great benefits. I do have a personal channel, yes. It's just twitch.tv / Brendon Isaiah Bengtson. Let me spell that for you. Twitch.tv / Brendon Isaiah Bengtson. There you go. That's my personal. I'm on there every once in a while, but if you want to give me a follow, I I do some work there. Okay, so we get the idea. This is a little tree trunk. I think the shapes are not working well. What do I think of a deer or fawn to add to this scene? I'll get back to that in just a second. The thing that I'm realizing is that this guy would be more interesting if he's back here. Because right now we got, oh, cool stuff, and then we got this like weird negative space where there's like nothing back there. And that if we took this and just went like that, now you've got way better depth back there, right? You got something in the way. Maybe we'll keep it short, but then we want to cross and fill some of that back there. Now, look at that. Look how much better that feels, right? And that's, again, just like paying attention to your negative space as well, right? Because now this shape is saying, oh, there's something in the back, and it lives back there, and then it comes and now it lives in front, and it gives this sense of depth. I like that. Cool. Really don't like this shape right here. This shape is bugging me to no end. And I think this shape is bugging me too because I don't have a lot of this, like, the shapes up top to saying that there's more fabric here. So it looks like there's less fabric up here, and suddenly there's more fabric down here. I think that's one of the really bugging about that. But I'm not quite ready for subdividing this and putting in those details yet. I still want to get the primary details. So what I'm seeing is the space from here to here is very similar to the space from here to here, which is very similar to the space from here to here. What I'd like to do is to say, well, what if we just creep this guy out like that, right? And now I have, and maybe this one actually, maybe this one comes in a little bit more like that, right? So now we've got small, large, medium, kind of medium. I still think that this piece here, this little back piece here is still, this is terrible. So, but that's just kind of, that's where what my eye is seeing is saying, okay, how do we get more interesting curves and this negative space? How do we get small, medium, and large shapes into that negative space? So kind of pull it in like that, maybe. Maybe it comes in. It kind of feels a little bit better, but then it kind of comes in a little bit and it goes against like this whole big swoop and then like this whole big swoop. So let's try something different. Maybe instead of it kind of coming in more, maybe it lives out further here and then comes in this way, right? And so it's a little bit more of a less of a curve, but still a curve, and then like a tighter curve, and then it falls down there. Let's see. Oh, the fawn thing. that's a possibility. So the thing that you want to be careful of is division of interest. You want to be very careful with directing your audience's eye and your audience's attention to where it wants to go. So what I want to do with this particular piece is say, there's one thing that or not one thing, but like there's one area that I really want you to look at. And I want your eye to wander, but still be pulled back to the area that I want you to be concentrated on. And that area of concentration obviously is this right here, right? This is where I want you to look. So what I want to make sure that I do is that every element of shape that I put in here is complementary to that. To say, I want your eye to look at the whole thing, but I want your eye to focus mainly here. And that's why I'm really deliberate about these lines of action, right? I want you to say, oh, boom, wow, this is really cool. And then I want your eye to like follow this, right? I want you to go, whoa, like this is really good. And then there's interest back up here. And then these shapes are very, very deliberate that they pull you back up into here. And this shape pulls you back up to here. So it's just very cyclical, like design elements to keep you focused on where I want you to focus your attention, or like the main part, right? And then that cycle should be apparent in as many different directions as possible. So I want if I'm looking at it from this side, I still have this element that like, oh, this is where most of my interest looks, right? The most amount of contrast, the most amount of detail. That's awesome. And then these elements pull you kind of away from that. Look at the other things. Oh, that's cool. This is cool. This is pulling you this way. This is pulling you this way. This is pulling you back over this way. And then you're still getting that nice like flow of your eye from different directions. And I think that's one of the things that's really cool and powerful about collectibles, is that it has this energy, but the viewing angle is always different, right? Or most of the times it's different, or could be different. Same thing with video game design, is that it's a kind of a living thing, and it's not just like, it's not an illustration where you have like one view, and it's not kind of, you're not moving around kind of thing. So long story short, I want to make sure that all different angles, that same thing is happening, right? Where I'm like, oh, this looks really, really cool. And then the leg is like, oh, wow, that's cool. And then that brings me down here, and and then I deliberately have something that pulls me back up and back around to the area of interest. Now you can see I haven't done any of that back here. So once I feel pretty solid about the front and I'm ready to probably be done with block in, then I'll go to the back and I'll say, okay, how do I make sure that I'm doing that back here? Because right now, just the overall feel of the back is still kind of bleh, right? It's because those elements aren't there, making sure that your eye is going in the right directions. So I have it from about here, all the way through here, through here, through here, all the way to about here, right? So all this stuff I have to resolve. But that's what really like draws me to collectibles, is just the interaction of like looking at things and experiencing art from a lot of different angles. I was long-winded. Sorry. For those people who intend to start in the market as a sculptor, what do you recommend? I see some people tending to focus on games. If you are in games or statues, I like both. Where is it easier to start? I think if you are, so here's what I would do. I would start with the big picture and work towards your big picture, right? So is this something that you just want to do on the side? Like your day job is like, oh, I'm a stockbroker, and I love doing stockbroker stuff. And but at night times I like doing sculpting because I like scratching that itch. Or is it like, dude, I really want to be a video game character artist, or I just want to do super dope, amazing collectibles. Like that is my one thing. Because if you start picking a bunch of different things, there's different pipelines for those things, and there's different amounts of time that you can put into that to get as good as you can be, where you can be making a living from. I would say focus first on where you want to make your living, and then that is your focus. If you're like, I want to be entrenched in video games, work on video game art. I want to, I want to be a super dope, amazing um, collectibles, and that's what I want to do for my main job. Then start doing things in poses. You know what I mean? So start with your big picture. What do you want to be? What do you want to be known for? What do you want to be like? The majority of your body of work. That's then go to that. Once you have that established, and you're able to like make a living doing that, then break out and do some of the other stuff. You plenty of time in your life. You'll be able to get to that other stuff, but focus on the thing that is going to be your breadwinner first. It's games, okay. Um, Character art. I'm assuming probably character art since I'm watching a character artist. Um, it's a very good point. It's often overlooked. One of the few hidden things that make a good model come together. Yes. Interesting to see a sculptor tell the same thing I've studied as a painter years ago. Some stuff for universal art for art. Absolutely, Alan. And that's like I actually I tell people quite a bit. Um, Somebody who makes a good sculptor, like like I actually see better sculptors come from like a design background, whether it's automotive design or graphic design or web design. Maybe not web design, but like when you cut down all of the things in traditional art ideologies, and you just say, okay, I need to make a logo, right? You only have a certain amount of things that you can do to make that logo really pop. And it makes you focus more on those core art principles, you know, value, silhouette, shape, pattern, hue, value. I think I said value. But like you have a couple of those things to really get good, and then you make something really interesting. You're like hyper focused on those key art principles. And you're not like, oh, the anatomy of the rhomboid goes from your teres minor to teres, and you're like, you start getting lost in all this technical stuff, and you kind of not really focusing on like what those key art principles are. So like as a painter, right? You're like hue, value, saturation, layout, uh, um, composition is like huge, right? Having your eye go different ways and what brings your eye in different ways, like those things are so important, and they're actually universal to all these different mediums, whether it's character art, whether it's collectible sculpting, whether it's miniature sculpting, whether it's logo design, whether it's like any kind of artistic medium, right? Those same art principles are so solid in what the human eye uh, sees as pleasing or not pleasing, right? And then understanding that, then you can put that to whatever medium you get to. But it's so universal. Right? Well, I'm talking about composition, right? If you're a painter, like you have a fixed composition, and you're able to use shape and design and value and hue and all of these elements, graphical elements, to be able to say, you know, oh, I want you to look here and I want you to look there and focus on this part and focus on that part. And then you do the same thing for in 3D like this, you know. But it's very very similar core, and that's why like I always say, understand those key art principles and then apply it to your medium. Yeah. Character art. Yes. Okay. said, for people who intend to start marketing as a sculptor, focus on games. Yeah, if you're gonna focus on games, as a character artist, there's two main things that you need to do. One is understand the game pipeline, as in block out high res mesh with details, low res, UVs, baking, and then materials, and then presentation. Oh, can't forget about presentation. But learn that pipeline, even if it's just something super simple, like take a sphere and sculpt something on a sphere, then take a low res of that, bake it down, put it into Marmoset. Put it into Painter and put some materials on it, and then understand the pipeline. Even if you're not doing a character, understand that pipeline. That's one major thing, and then the other thing obviously is anatomy. And then just start small for anatomy. Start what does the arm and chest feel like? Do a torso first. Don't do heads first. Don't do heads first. I would actually say, if you're starting as a character artist, keep your heads blank. You can have a head shape, but don't do anything here, because it's taking all of the shapeology that you're learning from the rest of the body and focusing it into one small little area. And to get something really appeasing and natural looking, have to understand how the shapes are related and how they're constructed, and focusing that on one little area is much, much more difficult than it is to say, let's figure out what the body, what does a shoulder look like? What does an elbow look like? What does a hip look like? Like, do the body first and then go to the head. But where you can have like neck and skull and jaw, but don't do facial features first. I would wait for a little while until you understand what the key principles applied to the anatomy of the body looks and feels good first, and then go to faces. So understand your pipeline, and then anatomy. Now I just do it. Sorry, it's been a lot of talking. It has been less sculpty this time around, and a lot more talky. So think that you can see awesome people sculpt awesome things at the ZBrush Summit. But I can talk to you about these types of things while I sculpt halfway decent things. Be a creature artist. Actually, in the AAA space, there are in video game art. Now, film may be a little bit different, but in video game art, there's usually a general character artist who can do good creatures and good outfits and good heads and good hair and good hands and good kits and NPCs and materials and baking and all of these things. But then sometimes you have people who are much more specialized, like, oh, I need a really good creature artist. Okay, there are some really, really good creature artists out there, like Chaba from Callisto Protocol and Striking Distance. He is an amazing creature artist. There's a couple of others that are like, yes. But then kind of once you put yourself into that bowl and you identify as, I'm a creature artist, then you're less likely to get work as a all-around character artist. You're like, oh, this guy's great at creatures. Are we doing creatures for this game? Nope. Okay, well, on to the next person. So like if you do creature art and you're like, I'm a creature artist, it kind of funnels you a little bit. But can I say his name? Chaba. CSABA. Chaba. It's like CBASA. Forget what his last name is. But if you look up Striking Distance, like go to LinkedIn, find Striking Distance Studio, and look for character artists. he was actually the guy that did most of the awesome, well, not most of, but he was part of the zombies team on Call of Duty. He was like, all those dope looking zombies over the last chunk of years in Call of Duty. He was that guy. And then you take that and then you put that, he went over to Striking Distance to work on Callisto Protocol, and you look at the monsters that are in there and you're like, that's him. That's him. But like, if you're that good and you're like absolutely stellar, you're like, oh my gosh, like we need Chaba here, because he's we have a lot of creatures, and like creatures are a huge thing for us. Let's go find him. Yeah, put it in the chat if you can find his start station. Thanks for the tips. I do like faces, but they take a lot of time, so I get your point. Yeah, they take. Even I have like, I've been sculpting for a very long time. I've been working as a professional character artist for a long time, and I still have trouble with faces. They're so difficult. When you're creating accessories like vest or mask, do you like to work that mask from character and extract? Okay, so let's say for your mask question, you're like, okay, for this arm piece, how would you kind of go about that? There's a couple of ways that you can do it. As long as you can get a piece that's here, then yeah. Like I may, if I want to follow the curvature of the thing that's underneath it, then I would probably do like an extraction, or I would mask it out. There's a lot of times, like for all these armor pieces in here, what I did was I came in here, I masked out a little portion. I did a polygroup, and then split that polygroup off into its own subtool, and then now I have a piece of geo that conforms to the mesh below it. That's what I did for like this and this and this. Like most of these pieces, that's actually what I did. Even for these pieces here, I masked out that shape on the hip, and then pulled it off as its own. So I do that quite a bit, yeah. Where were we? I think this is kind of okay. I feel like this is a good direction for tree stumps mixed with these guys. I don't know if I'm going to keep this guy or not. Feeling pretty good about that, and it's actually time. So I do have to wrap up. I feel like we talked way more than we actually sculpted. So if those of you that were here to see Sculpty and less talky, I apologize. Sometimes I get a little carried away with my advice, but hopefully it was helpful. So if I'm actually off work all next week, so I probably will be doing some personal streaming. So if you would like to follow me on my personal channel, I probably will be doing some work next week on my personal channel. But also, be sure to check out our Clinker Built Studio site. builtstudio.com. Take a look at our site, and if you want to add some Warhammer painted minis to your collection, or know somebody who may want to, we do have some models up there that are painted and up for sale. Appreciate your support. Maybe even forward it to somebody who you think would be into something like that. Would really appreciate the shares and such. So I do have a lot more that I'm working on right now. You can actually see behind me here, there's a whole shelf of 3D printed stuff that I'm going to be painting here pretty soon, probably on stream. But some of the Warhammer stuff, Age of Sigmar and 40K stuff will actually be up on the Etsy site at some point. So, if that so suits you, you like the painting side of the things too, then awesome. Actually, the plan for this model is to print it myself and paint it with acrylic paints, just like you would be doing for regular minis. So I'm going to be painting this. I have a Elegoo Saturn 2 8K printer that I print all my stuff on. So I'm going to actually print this, and I'm going to paint it, and all of that stuff will be probably on stream, not the printing. But yeah, that's what I'm going to do with this one. I actually have another. I did another skull from Warhammer 40K, Servitor skull, that I'm going to be printing as well too, once I get a chance to finish that and get it print prepped. But yes, that's a lot. Yes, there's a lot of 3D printed stuff back there. That's a lot, ton. But that's actually, this guy is one of the guys that I can't see my camera because it's all jacked, but this guy is from Bestiarum Games. Awesome sculpt. But I'm thinking that this Demon General is probably going to be about. All right. I got to go. So thank you very much, everybody, for hanging out. Thanks for all the great questions. Thanks for listening. Thanks for taking a second to check out our Clinker Built Studio, and thanks for hanging out. I will see you guys possibly on my own stream over this next week. Probably will be doing work on this fine lady, and we will see you soon. So thank you, everybody. Hope you guys had fun. I hope you guys learned a couple things, but most of all, I hope you were inspired to go make your own cool stuff. Get out there. Go make some cool shit stuff. All right. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it. I will see you soon. Bye.